I want to tell you a story. In the comments section of a video, one where a Disco Elysium cosplayer wanders across the stage at a convention, I read something that stuck with me. A seemingly innocuous joke reading, "Never compliment anyone on their Harry Du Bois cosplay, for they may not be cosplaying at all." It's a funny line, the kind of humor designed to get a quick exhale out of your nose before you scroll past it, but it really does ring true if you think about it. Disco Elysium is a beautiful experience, in large part due to the fact that everyone sees a little bit of themselves in Harry, the main character. That's somewhat a necessity given the genre the game is occupying. A role-playing game, one where we're specifically meant to embody the character we play as. And to do that effectively, they need to be relatable to the person holding the mouse and keyboard. But I think it's something more than that. Harry in this world is a pre-established and well-known individual. He has a past, he has defined character traits, he has a reputation that precedes him in the absolute worst ways imaginable. And these things actively influence the types of choices available to the player. He is a broken, desperate, deeply flawed human being whose struggles with addiction and self-destruction have alienated everyone who ever cared about him. And that is exactly why it was such a genius decision by the developers to have Harry, and as a byproduct to the player, begin the game after a total blackout and near complete memory loss. If you were just handed the reins to a character this thoroughly ruined, you'd feel a profound narrative disconnect. You'd be forced to answer for crimes you didn't commit, to apologize for drunken tirades you weren't present for, but your character consciously was. But by waking up in a trashed hostel room with absolutely zero recollection of who you are, what year it is, or what the concept of money even means, the player and Harry get to discover information at the exact same time. More than that, they get to choose to be different than the Harry that had been previously established in the world. They get to choose to be a different kind of person. Both Harry and you as the player. Disco Elysium fundamentally understands that the mechanics of a role-playing game are not just a vehicle for combat or stat checking, but a reflection of the protagonist's internal psychology. This is immediately apparent in the way the game handles its skill system. The various skills that come into play aren't only numbers on a character sheet, but they're characters in and of themselves, each having a distinct personality, and talking directly to Harry over the course of the game. They chime in during conversations, they argue with each other, they provide conflicting advice, and they constantly narrate the sensory and emotional input of the world around you. My personal favorite is Inland Empire, the voice of your imagination, your gut feelings, and the connection between your emotions and the forces of the world. With Volition being a close second, acting as the battered but resilient voice of reason trying to keep you from completely losing yourself. These skills have many of the best lines in the game, and they're likely to stick with you for long after the credits roll. Everyone here is brought to life by top-notch voice acting that gives each and every character, whether they exist in the physical world or purely inside Harry's mind, an incredibly distinct and memorable presence within the game. The sounds of Disco Elysium are further elevated by a soundtrack composed by British Sea Power that envelops the entire world in a mysterious, dreary, and somehow deeply hopeful tone. But not only that, the mechanics and the narrative are so inextricably linked that the developers found ways to justify even the most mundane player habits through the lens of Harry's character. Disco Elysium is a CRPG, so players are naturally going to double-click on where they want to go in order to have Harry run there faster instead of walking slowly. We've all done it. You have to get from the whirling in rags to the fishing village, and you don't want to spend 10 minutes watching a middle-aged man walk at a leisurely pace. So you frantically double-click your mouse to make him sprint everywhere. Your partner, Kim Kitsuragi, even makes mention of this. He points out that you are running absolutely everywhere, darting across the streets like a maniac, and he explicitly states he doesn't know how you're able to do so without collapsing from sheer exhaustion. It's kind of a funny throwaway meta joke right up until the end of the game, where your former partner from the 41st Precinct arrives and delivers an explanation of exactly who Harry used to be. He ties together how and why Harry is so good with kids like Cuno and Cuno S, and why he possesses the cardiovascular endurance to sprint across Revachol for days on end. Because before he was a detective, before the drinking and the drugs and the heartbreak, Harry used to be a gym teacher. It's a really well done revelation hidden behind a mechanical quirk, and I think it's a great example of how the narrative is able to back up gameplay decisions, ensuring that there's no disconnect between the story being told and the buttons you're pressing. This philosophy of marrying mechanics to storytelling extends directly into the world design and pacing of the game as well. Martinaise, the district of Revachol where the game takes place, is not a massive, sprawling open world filled with meaningless map markers and repetitive fetch quests. It's a dense, decaying, hyper-focused slice of a city that opens up to the player at a natural, logical pace. The world unlocks new sections to explore and investigate with entirely logical reasons as to why you can't go to certain areas yet. For the first few days, your access to the coastal area is cut off because a waterlock is broken. It's not just an arbitrary, invisible wall placed there by a level designer to gate your progress. It's a physical reality of the world that actively impacts other characters. You learn that one of the characters, Lena, hasn't seen her husband in a concerning amount of time. He's a cryptozoologist, out searching for mythical insects, and is trapped on the other side of the waterlock, unable to get back to the Whirling in Rags to meet her. It's these seemingly small details that aid in making the world feel more like a real place, populated by people whose lives are being disrupted by the same infrastructural failures that are annoying you as the player. Not only that, but it also means that by helping other people, you're also helping yourself, and vice versa. You take on any case that comes your way, whether it pertains to the larger murder mystery or not, because all of the characters here are so well written and acted that they just feel good to interact with. You don't help people in Disco Elysium because the game offers you a shiny new weapon or a certain upgrade. You help them because their dialogue is so compelling, their struggles so profoundly human, that walking away feels like a betrayal of the world itself. You find yourself doing whatever it takes to fix the waterlock so Lena can see her husband again. You find yourself taking drugs out of a dilapidated, abusive household to save Cuno from his deadbeat father. You throw yourself into the minutiae of these broken lives because deep down, Harry is desperately looking for a way to fix something, anything, to prove that he is still capable of doing good in a world, in a body that seems entirely devoid of it. It's this decaying world that's explored through the environment itself. The incredibly in-depth history of Martinaise and Revachol is written directly into the architecture, with bullet holes from battles past still shown in the walls across the city. You learn about the failed communist revolution, the brutal capitalist coalition that crushed it, and the lingering scars left behind through conversations with characters like Rene, an old, bitter man playing pétanque who fought in the revolution that led to the state of Revachol today. The history of this world, the characters in it, and the main plot of the game are linked in such an incredible way. But to understand the core thesis of Disco Elysium, we have to look closely at the inciting incident of the game. The corpse hanging from the tree. At the very beginning of your investigation, during the autopsy of the body, your Inland Empire skill allows you to essentially communicate with the corpse. In this surreal conversation, the dead man tells you something that sets the thematic tone for the rest of the narrative. He says, "Love did me in, but communism killed me." On a very literal level, within the confines of the murder mystery itself, this is exactly what happened. The man in the tree was a mercenary, stationed in Martinaise to break a Union strike. He engaged in a deeply passionate and destructive affair with a woman named Classia. Their version of love is what put him in the crosshairs, rendering him distracted and vulnerable by the window of her bedroom. Love did him in. But the bullet that actually ended his life was fired from across the bay, from a ruined island fortress by a sniper. That sniper is the deserter, an old communist revolutionary soldier who deserted his post decades ago, and has been living in isolation, watching the city decay from afar. Communism, in the literal form of this forgotten soldier, killed him. But this line is not just a clue to solving the case, it's a direct metaphorical mirror held up to Harry's entire character arc. Before the events of the game, Harry was a man profoundly destroyed by the end of his relationship. The loss of the woman he loved is what set him on the path of relentless self-destruction, pushing him to go completely off the deep end, resulting in the massive blackout that erased his memory. Love did him in. And over the course of the game, the act of solving this murder, of tracking down the communist deserter and unraveling the geopolitical tragedy of Revachol is what metaphorically kills him. Or at least, it kills the old Harry. The investigation forces him to confront the reality of the world and his place in it, giving him the ultimate choice to wake up from his oblivion knowing absolutely nothing, and actively choose to be a different kind of person. The old Harry died in that hostel room. The man who walked out is a different kind of animal. There's a moment very early on in the investigation that I think perfectly encapsulates the quiet, agonizing hope that permeates Disco Elysium. Kim Kitsuragi, ever the professional, takes his camera out to photograph the hanged man for official police records. Before he presses the shutter, he specifically calls out the fact that after this shot, he only has one more shot of film left in his camera. When the photo develops, the player is shown the item in their inventory, and despite the gruesome, bloated subject matter, the artwork of the photograph is absolutely gorgeous. It displays an intricate web of blue lines stretching across the man's torso from his tattoos, capturing a strange, melancholic beauty in the midst of total degradation. And because Kim explicitly told you that he only has one shot left, you spend the entire rest of the game with that knowledge sitting in the back of your mind. Through all of the political debates, the gunfights, the quiet moments in the rain, and the grueling police work, you're waiting. You spend the game waiting for the next and final picture that Kim is going to take. You spend the game waiting for something beautiful to happen. But before you can reach that beauty, you have to wade through the past. If you explore the coastal area of the map, you can find a working payphone. And if you interact with it, Harry begins to dial a number. He doesn't know whose number it is, but his fingers move automatically, driven by muscle memory and a desperate, lingering ache in his chest. He calls his former fiancée. Despite the total memory wipe, waking up from oblivion, not even knowing his own name or what his face looks like in the mirror, his mind held on to her number, onto her. The ensuing conversation is heartbreaking. It's the sound of a man begging for a connection that has been dead for years, speaking to a woman who has long since moved on and is exhausted by his inability to do the same. He dreams of his ex, Dora Ingerland, but in his mind, her character is portrayed as the figure of Dolores Day, a historical figure in Revachol who practically achieved biblical status. Earlier in the game, you can visit an abandoned church with a massive, shattered mural of Dolores Day on the wall. Looking up at it with this new context gives you the perspective on exactly how Harry viewed his partner. This wasn't simply love. He worshipped her, placed her on an impossible, divine pedestal, and when things inevitably couldn't live up to the fantasy, the mural shattered. In the dream, Harry begs her to come back. He tries every possible dialogue option to convince her, to reason with her, to apologize, and she responds with a line that completely breaks the fourth wall, weaponizing the game's own mechanics against the player. She explains how he always treated their relationship like a puzzle to be solved, like a dialogue tree where he could just pick the right words to manipulate the outcome. She looks at him and says, "You're doing it right now again, aren't you?" It's a beautiful and devastating way to explain why their relationship deteriorated. It reveals that the dialogue options appearing on our screen are not simply a video game mechanic. They are quite literally how Harry processes conversations. Everything to him was this way. He views human interaction as a series of inputs and outputs, searching for the exact combination of words that will fix the problem, completely failing to realize that some things can't be fixed with a persuasion check. You can do everything right. You can pass the check, you can pick the perfect dialogue option, and you can still lose her. While Dora offers a more somber look into Harry's past, there is a particularly horrific necktie that represents the chaotic, vibrant, and comedic parts of his present. The necktie is a garish, ugly piece of clothing that you can find hanging from the ceiling fan in your destroyed hostel room at the very start of the game. If your Inland Empire skill is high enough, the tie actually speaks to you. Throughout the game, it acts as the devil on your shoulder, a loud, obnoxious voice encouraging you to drink, to do drugs, to embrace the madness and be the chaotic disco cop you were always meant to be. It offers an incredibly funny contrast during otherwise dark moments. But as the story progresses towards its violent climax, the tone of the tie shifts. Harry is constantly throwing himself into harm's way. When he chases after Ruby, a potential suspect for the murder, he does everything in his power to stop her from ending things when she feels backed against a wall. When the mercenary tribunal takes place, a heavily armed standoff in the courtyard of the Whirling in Rags, both Harry and Kim put themselves right in the line of fire. They stand directly between the armor-clad mercenaries and the under-equipped dock workers trying to defuse the situation and save as many people as possible. They do this when shit hits the fan, when the bullets start flying, and even when both parties have been entirely uncooperative, unhelpful, and openly antagonistic to them up until that exact moment. It's during this tribunal, this moment of life or death panic, that the Horrific Necktie speaks to you for the final time. If you followed its advice earlier in the game and purchased a bottle of blue medicinal spirit, the tie tells Harry that it's time to say goodbye. It tells him to stuff it into the bottle and use it as a Molotov cocktail against the mercenaries. And under the admittedly funny dialogue, it is a stunningly poetic moment. The tie, the physical embodiment of Harry's loud, drunken, embarrassing past, is sacrificing itself. Harry is literally burning away the last vestige of his old life, using the very remnants of his addiction and chaos to try and be better, to save the people around him in the process. And I think this is the moment that Harry truly begins to heal. Healing, however, is not a linear process, and it doesn't always look conventionally successful. This is best exemplified by a seemingly minor side quest where Harry decides he wants to sing karaoke. Stay with me here. He needs to find the exact right song to express his vast, oceanic soul to the indifferent patrons of the Whirling in Rags. He eventually finds a tape containing a track by British Sea Power, referred to in-game as the smallest church in Saint-Saëns. When the time comes to grab the microphone, the game presents you with a skill check. If you pass the check, Harry delivers a hauntingly beautiful, melancholic rendition of the song. The camera pans across the room, showing the workers, the hostel manager, and Kim listening in quiet, respectful awe. But if you fail the check, the game doesn't punish you. Instead, Harry screams the lyrics, his voice cracking and breaking, pouring every ounce of his pain, his pathetic desperation, and his broken heart into the microphone, all while the clientele completely ignores him. Both outcomes are equally entertaining, and more importantly, both are equally viable, beautiful options for completing the objective. The failure is not a punishment, it's just a different, messier translation of his grief. Whether he hits the notes perfectly or screams until his throat bleeds, Harry's trying to express something that words alone can't capture. All of these moments, the karaoke, the shootout, the quiet debriefings on the balcony with Kim at the end of every day, they lead to the thematic crescendo of the entire game. At the very end of your journey, on the island where you confront the deserter, you encounter something that should be impossible. You come face to face with the Insulindian Phasmid, a massive, mythical cryptid that Lena and her husband have spent their entire lives searching for. It steps out of the reeds, towering over Harry and Kim, a creature of pure, ancient biology that defies all logic and reason in this grim, politically exhausted world. If your skills are high enough, you can communicate with it. Now, it's important that I call back to a line spoken by Harry in the nights leading up to his total blackout. During a conversation with Klassia, Harry asks her questions about his past and what he's been like prior to Kim's arrival. According to her, you could be heard through the walls of the hostel screaming, "I don't want to be this kind of animal anymore." The Phasmid tells Harry that it's terrified of humans, of the Pale, of the destruction we bring. It tells him that his mind is a frightening, violent place. And Harry, looking up at this magnificent, impossible creature, is given a dialogue option that serves as the emotional thesis statement for the entire 40-hour experience. He says, "I'm glad to be me, an incredibly sensitive instrument." Harry has moved past the exhaustion and desperate pleas for grace. He's no longer the drunken cop, no longer the heartbroken lover. He doesn't want to be a creature capable of inflicting so much pain on himself and others. He wants to be something else, something better. He woke up from nothing and chose to be a different kind of animal. Earlier in the game, in the ruined courtyards of Martinaise, there's a blank wall on the side of a building. If you acquire a paintbrush and a container of red-dyed heavy fuel oil, you're given the option to paint a mural for the rest of the district and Revachol as a whole to see. You can paint several different things, but the most striking option is a simple phrase. You paint the words, "Something beautiful is going to happen." It's an absurd statement to make in a city cratered by artillery shells, in a district paralyzed by a labor strike, written by a man whose life is entirely in shambles. But that's what makes it so powerful. Disco Elysium is a game about the expectation of beauty in a world that actively tries to crush it out of you. You spend the entire game waiting for it. For the case to be solved, for the strike to end. You wait for Kim to use the last shot of film in his camera. And in the final moments of the game, Kim does take that picture. He doesn't take a picture of the deserter, nor of the evidence. He turns the camera and takes a picture of the Insulindian Phasmid, standing right in front of you. A mirror image. Disco Elysium is a game about something beautiful that's going to happen. And something beautiful did, in fact, happen. It was you.
Suffering is firing up again.
À la petite église là-bas.
I'm Kim Kitsuragi, Lieutenant, Prison 57.
This is
Même si elle était plus
but it's still something.
Look, the insane police officer is back.
It is time to unleash
The other world.
The bourgeois are not human.
vers ces falaises blanches là-bas.